Hello, dear students. Today in this, we will cover the last act that is the fifth act from Julius Caesar. So let's start with the scene 1. The dawn broke cold and pale over the fields of Philippi. A thin mist clung to the ground, curling around the boots of soldiers as they stood in ranks, their armor glinting with the first light. Trumpets blared, horses snorted, banners flapped stiffly in the morning air. On one side of the plain stood the forces of Octavius and Antony, their lines disciplined, their numbers swelled by towns that had joined them along the march. On the other side, across the field, stood the armies of Brutus and Cassius, hardened by desperation, weary but resolute. The air itself seemed to tremble with the promise of blood. At the head of their forces, Octavius and Antony rode forward, their horses stamping. With them came their captains, carrying the authority of Caesar's heir. Across the field, Brutus and Cassius advanced to meet them, accompanied by their officers Titinius, Lucilius, and Messala. The two parties halted within shouting distance, the gap between them charged with hatred. Antony was the first to speak, his voice carrying like steel across the plain. Antony, to Cassius, "Villains! Traitors! You struck down the mightiest man that ever lived, and now you dare to stand armed before us? You have no right to breathe the air of Rome, let alone command her armies." Cassius's face darkened with rage. "This tongue of yours is sharp, Antony, but words are wind. We killed Caesar for Rome's freedom, not for villainy. You who flatter the dead and stir the mob to riot dare call us traitors?" Antony sneered. "You stabbed him in envy, not in justice. You loved him not, but envied his greatness, and now his spirit rides with us. This day shall be his revenge." Brutus, calm but resolute, raised his voice. "Hear me, Antony. If we were motivated by ambition, then today's battle will prove it. If we were honest, then Rome will show it too. You may rail with words, but swords will decide this cause." Octavius, young but proud, now spurred his horse forward. His voice rang with icy defiance. "Octavius, I will not be taught by you, Brutus. You have the show of virtue, but your dagger is still red with Caesar's blood. Know this, I will not yield the battlefield to you. You take the left wing, I will hold the right no matter what Antony advises." Antony shot Octavius a glance, irritation flashing in his eyes at the boy's stubbornness, but he bit back his words. Octavius was Caesar's heir, and Antony would not quarrel with him before the enemy. Brutus leaned forward in his saddle, his voice steady, though it carried the quiet bitterness of memory. "Young Octavius, you bear Caesar's name, but you bear not yet his wisdom. You fight for his legacy, but today you may find that names do not shield men from steel." Octavius's jaw tightened. "We shall see, Brutus." The commanders turned back to their armies. Shouts rose as the soldiers braced themselves. The clash was imminent. But before returning to their ranks, Brutus and Cassius drew aside, their faces marked with solemnity. The nearness of battle pressed on them, and both felt the shadow of fate. Cassius spoke first, his tone unusually grave. "This day, Brutus, is the day that brings either victory or ruin. You know well that I am not one to fear shadows, yet the omens trouble me. 2 mighty eagles perched upon our standards yesterday, and they fed from our soldiers' hands. But today, they are gone. In their place, ravens and crows circle above us, shrieking. Such birds are the messengers of death. I do not like these signs." Brutus placed a hand on his arm, speaking with calm resolve. "Do not trouble yourself with omens, Cassius. Each man's life is bound by a thread, and when it is cut, it cannot be tied again. If we are to fall, we fall as Romans, with honor. If we are to stand, we stand for liberty. Fate shall do its work. Let us do ours." Cassius studied his friend, then sighed, the weight of years and choices heavy upon him. "You have always been the philosopher, Brutus. For myself, I confess, I do not bear with patience the thought of being led in chains through Rome, mocked and scorned. If defeat comes, I shall not live to see it." Brutus's eyes softened. but his voice held quiet steel. "I do not swear to die if fortune goes against us. Yet I will never return to Rome as a slave. Better death than dishonor. But for now, let us embrace as brothers before we march. If we do not meet again, Cassius, farewell." This parting might be our last. Cassius's voice broke as he clasped Brutus's hand tightly. "Forever and forever, farewell, Brutus. If we meet again, we'll smile. If not, then this parting was well made." Brutus returned the clasp with equal fervor. "Forever and forever, farewell, Cassius. If we do meet again, we shall smile indeed. If not, this farewell shall be remembered." They stood for a moment, silent, the bond of years and struggle passing between them in that single embrace. Then they parted, each turning to his men. The trumpets sounded. The mist began to lift. Across the plain, the two great armies moved, shields gleaming, spears bristling, voices shouting their commanders' names. The Battle of Philippi was about to begin. Scene 2. The ground of Philippi trembled with the restless shifting of thousands of soldiers. Dust began to rise as both armies maneuvered, banners whipping in the early light. From the Roman camp of the conspirators came the sound of drums, sharp and insistent, echoing like the heartbeat of war. Brutus rode swiftly along the front lines of his men, his cloak streaming behind him, his face composed yet burning with inward fire. He raised his arm, signaling for silence. The soldiers, gripping spears and shields, stilled their ranks and turned their eyes upon him. Brutus's thoughts surged within him. This is the hour. Antony and Octavius think to sweep us aside with their numbers, but surprise is our ally. If Cassius falters, all may be lost. I must strike first, hard, before Antony presses in on our flank. He wheeled his horse toward a trusted officer, Messala, who rode at his side. His voice was steady, but urgent. "Brutus, ride forth, Messala. Command the left wing to charge with full force upon Octavius's line. Strike swiftly, before they are prepared. Let our steel break their order before Antony can join them. Go, fly with speed." Messala saluted with his sword. "It shall be done, my lord." With a kick of his heels, he galloped away, his horse thundering across the plain toward Cassius's position. Brutus then lifted his own sword high, the rising sun glinting upon the blade. His voice rang out like a trumpet itself, carrying across the lines. "Brutus, Romans, strike now for liberty. Strike for Rome and for the promise we made on the Ides of March. Show the world that Caesar's fall was not in vain." A roar rose from his men, shields hammered, swords lifted high. The air shook with their cry, "For Brutus, for Rome." From the opposite lines, Octavius's standards wavered as his troops tightened ranks. Drums beat furiously, horns blared, the entire plain alive with the clash of intent. Brutus spurred his horse forward, the charge beginning to form. Across the battlefield, Cassius's men shifted uncertainly, waiting for the word that would bring them into the fray. Dust rose, cries of command rang out, and the silence of dawn was torn apart by the first thunder of marching feet. The Battle of Philippi had begun. Now it is Scene 3. The battlefield at Philippi was a storm of dust and shouting. Lines of men clashed in thunderous collision. Shields slammed, swords rang, and the cries of the wounded pierced the air. Smoke rose from the trampled earth, the smell of sweat and iron mingling with the bitter tang of blood. On one side of the plain, Cassius and his troops had fought Antony's men fiercely, pressing them back for a time. But the tide had shifted. Antony's forces, more numerous and better supplied, surged again, breaking through. Cassius's men, weary and disordered, fell back step by step. Cassius, his face darkened with dust and grief, rode with Titinius and his standard-bearer to a rise overlooking the field. His eagle banner was torn and blood-stained, its wings drooping. Cassius looked out upon the battlefield with stricken eyes. Cassius to Titinius, "Oh, this day is turned against us, Titinius." Brutus gave the word too soon. His men charged before Antony's troops were ready, and for a while they struck hard, but in pressing forward, They left our flank open. Now Antony has seized the advantage, and all is lost. Titinius, loyal and resolute, tried to comfort him. Not all is lost, my lord. See, there, Brutus's men still fight bravely. The day is not yet over. But Cassius shook his head, despair gripping his heart. No, Titinius. The very eagles that once perched upon our standards have fled us, and in their place come ravens and kites, birds of carrion, circling above as if already feasting on our bodies. These are omens, and they mock me now. This, Titinius, is my birthday, and it shall also be the day of my death. Fate has chosen it, so, at that moment his scout Pindarus hurried up, breathless, dust upon his face. He pointed across the field. My lord, see yonder! The tents of Brutus are taken, his men scattered. Octavius's banners rise within his camp. Cassius squinted into the haze. Indeed, he saw flames licking at the edges of Brutus's camp and enemy standards waving within. His heart sank. Cassius, then Brutus is undone, and with him our cause. Come, Titinius, ride swiftly. See whether those troops approaching are friend or foe. My sight is dim with age and smoke. Find out who they are. Titinius clasped his hand firmly. I will, my lord. Wait here but a moment. I will return with truth. He spurred his horse and galloped toward the distant group of soldiers who were approaching. Cassius turned to Pindarus, his voice grim. Now, slave, climb this hill with me. From that height your younger eyes may see what mine cannot. Look, and tell me truly what becomes of Titinius. Together they climbed a rocky slope, the roar of the battle muffled by the height. Pindarus peered out across the plain, shading his eyes against the sun. Below, Titinius reached the approaching troops. The soldiers suddenly surged around him, cheering, throwing their arms in the air. Pindarus's heart pounded, his breath catching. In the confusion, he mistook the joyous shouts for cries of capture. Pindarus, shouting down, My lord! They have surrounded him. They shout in triumph. Titinius is taken. Your dearest friend is a prisoner. Cassius staggered back, his face hollow with despair. Taken? Oh gods, this is too much. Brutus defeated. Titinius captured. Rome lost. My life has come full circle. I was born upon this day, and upon this day I shall die. He drew his dagger and held it out to Pindarus. His voice was low but firm. Cassius, take thou the hilt, Pindarus. In this very sword was Caesar struck. Now with it shall Cassius die as well. Kill me, slave, as I command thee. Pindarus trembled, horror in his eyes. My lord, I cannot. Cassius, fiercely, do it. You swore an oath to obey me. Free me now from this world, whose burden I can bear no longer. Strike and be gone. Go far from Rome, for none will hunt you. With shaking hands, Pindarus took the hilt. Cassius bared his breast and whispered hoarsely, Caesar, thou art avenged. Then, with Pindarus's thrust, the blade sank deep. Cassius fell heavily upon the rocks, his blood soaking into the earth. His eyes glazed, and his voice faltered in a final murmur. O coward that I am, to live so long, to see my best friend ta'en. His breath ceased. Pindarus dropped the blade in horror, then fled down the hill into the smoke of the battlefield, vanishing into the chaos. Moments later, Titinius rode back, alive and well, a wreath of victory upon his head. With him came Messala, bearing tidings. They reined in their horses, only to see Cassius's body sprawled upon the rocks. Titinius gasped, his joy turned to despair. O gods, what hast thou done? Cassius, noble Cassius, you have slain yourself by mistake. The troops I rode to were friends. They welcomed me with shouts of joy, not capture. And now you are lost forever. Messala shook his head in grief. This was the work of misinterpreted signs. O misfortune, that men should die through errors of the eye and ear. Titinius dismounted slowly, tears streaming. This is too much. Cassius, my general, my friend, I will not outlive you. If you have chosen this dark path, then I shall follow. Here, with this wreath that was meant for your brow, I crown you now in death, and with your own sword, I end my life. He pressed the wreath upon Cassius's lifeless head, then drew Cassius's dagger. With a cry of anguish, he fell upon it, collapsing across his master's body. His blood mingled with Cassius's, their deaths sealed in tragic brotherhood. Messala, overcome, whispered, "So die the noblest Romans. I must bear this news to Brutus. He must know his friend is gone." As he departed, the plain raged with battle, but upon that lonely hill lay Cassius and Titinius, still and silent, their deaths a monument to the waste of civil war. Now coming to scene 4. The battlefield of Philippi was a vast storm of steel and dust. Shouts rose and fell like waves against a rocky shore. Trumpets screamed above the din, and the cries of the dying mingled with the clash of arms. All around, Romans fought Romans, brother against brother, the Republic tearing itself apart upon its own soil. Brutus's forces, though fierce in spirit, were faltering. Antony's men pressed them hard, their superior numbers pushing them back step by step. The plain was littered with broken standards, shattered shields, and bodies of the fallen. Amid this chaos, Brutus's officers and soldiers rallied around their commander. Brutus himself, riding across the field, urged them on with shouts of courage, though his face bore the shadow of grief. He had not yet heard of Cassius's death, but some heavy instinct weighed upon him, as though part of his soul had already been torn away. Nearby, Lucilius, the faithful friend of Brutus, fought valiantly, sword flashing, his armor dented and bloodied. He saw the tide turning, saw Antony's troops closing in around them like a tightening noose. He knew the day was lost, but he also knew that Brutus must be preserved if the cause was to retain any dignity, any spark of honor. Suddenly, a troop of Antony's soldiers broke through the lines, shouting wildly, their blades ready. Their leader pointed and cried, "There! Brutus! Take him alive!" Lucilius heard the cry, and in that instant, a fierce resolve came over him. He raised his sword high and shouted in defiance, his voice carrying above the chaos, "Lucilius! Yes, I am Brutus! Take me if you can! Strike and end the life of Brutus here upon the field!" The soldiers roared, believing him. They surged upon him with renewed fury. Lucilius fought desperately, slashing and parrying, staggering under the press of blades. He was wounded, blood pouring from his arm, yet still he cried, "I am Brutus! Do your worst, cowards!" The enemy, astonished by his courage, hesitated. One of them, seeing the nobility of his face, shouted, "Hold! Do not kill him! Antony commanded us to take Brutus alive. He shall live and be brought before our general." They disarmed him, though not without effort. Lucilius still struggling, refusing to yield like a man possessed. At last, bleeding and exhausted, he fell into their grasp. One soldier, sneering, said, "So, the great Brutus is taken at last. Antony will reward us well for this prize." Lucilius lifted his head, his eyes flashing with triumph even in defeat. "Fools! I am not Brutus. I am Lucilius, and I chose to give my life in place of his. Know this, Brutus shall never be taken alive. As for me, I am glad to have deceived you. Kill me if you will. It matters not. I die content, for Brutus still walks free." The soldiers were struck silent by his words. His act of loyalty shamed even the roughest among them. One of the captains, moved by such honor, shook his head. "Captain, no, do not kill this man. Such loyalty is greater than gold. Antony will value him alive more than Brutus dead. Bind his wounds. Carry him gently. He shall stand before our general as proof that Rome still breeds noble hearts, even among her enemies." The soldiers obeyed, lifting Lucilius carefully, despite his protests. As they bore him away, Lucilius managed a faint smile, whispering through clenched teeth, "Antony may have me, but he shall never have Brutus. The true Brutus is beyond their reach." And so the battle raged on. But Lucilius's brave deception bought Brutus a few more precious hours of freedom, hours in which fate would yet decide his end. Now here it is, the last scene. That is scene 5. The battlefield of Philippi was all but lost. smoke and dust hung heavy in the air, lit by the last red rays of a dying sun. The cries of the wounded echoed faintly, but Antony's standards now flew proudly across the plain. Brutus's army, scattered and broken, had been driven to ruin. On a small rise, away from the press of the fight, Brutus stood with the few who remained loyal at his side: Clitus, Dardanius, Strato, and Volumnius. Their armor was battered, their faces streaked with sweat and blood, but their eyes were fixed on their general, the man who had led them through both triumph and disaster. Brutus looked out across the field. The smoke parted just enough for him to see Antony's soldiers pressing closer. His heart was heavy, not with fear, but with sorrow and resignation. Brutus, quietly, "The day is lost, all is gone. My heart tells me that this is the end. Cassius is dead, noble Titinius is dead, and Rome is lost to Caesar's heirs. Yet I will not live to be paraded through the streets of Rome as a prisoner, mocked and shamed. It is better to end life here, as a free man." He turned to his friends, his eyes kind but resolute. "Come, my companions. It is more worthy of me to die than to wait for Antony's soldiers to seize me. Will one of you give me the service that I must ask? Will one of you hold my sword while I run upon it?" A silence fell. Clitus looked down at the ground, his hands trembling. Clitus: "Forgive me, my lord, but I cannot." "Not that deed. I would rather die myself." Brutus nodded without anger. "I understand." "It is not an easy thing to ask." He turned to Dardanius. "And you, good Dardanius, will you help me in this?" Dardanius's face crumpled. "My lord, I cannot." "To strike down Brutus? My hand would sooner wither." Brutus sighed, yet his voice remained gentle. "So be it. You are faithful, though you deny me." Volumnius, his old companion and fellow scholar, stepped closer. Brutus clasped his arm. "Volumnius, you are my friend of many years. We have studied together, fought together. Hear me, my hour has come. I pray you, hold my sword while I run upon it." Volumnius's eyes filled with tears. "No, Brutus. No, this is not an act for friends. This is not the end I wish for you. Ask me anything else. But not this." Brutus placed a hand on his shoulder, gratitude shining even in despair. "You are still my friend, though you refuse." The sound of approaching soldiers grew louder, Antony's men closing in through the smoke. Brutus's time was short. He turned to them all, his voice ringing clear, steady as iron. "Brutus, my friends, I shall have glory in this losing day. My course has run. The stars that guided me burn no more. But I rejoice that not one man among you has betrayed me. You have all been true. Tell the world this, that Brutus's heart was always faithful, even in death." He looked to Strato, the quiet soldier who had long served him faithfully. Brutus's gaze was searching. "Strato, you are a man of honor. You have seen me bear my life with dignity. Will you help me now to die with dignity as well? Hold my sword steady and turn your face away if you must." Strato swallowed hard, then nodded. "Yes, my lord. I will do it. I owe you that much, and more." Brutus's face softened into relief. He clasped Strato's hand firmly. "Thank you. Caesar, now be still. I did not kill you with half so good a will." With that, Brutus placed the hilt of his sword into Strato's grasp. He steadied the blade, turned it toward his breast, and with unshaking resolve, threw himself upon it. The steel pierced deep, and Brutus fell to the ground. His lifeblood flowed out into the soil of Philippi. His last breath left him as a sigh, his face peaceful, as though he had at last found rest. Strato dropped the sword, grief etched upon his features. He whispered, "This was the noblest Roman of them all." Moments later, Antony's soldiers entered the scene, surrounding them. Messala and the others surrendered, but when Antony himself came upon the body of Brutus, he looked down with solemn respect. Antony, quietly to his men, "This was the noblest Roman of them all. All the conspirators, save only he, acted out of envy of great Caesar, but Brutus alone acted not for himself, but for the good of Rome. His life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature herself might stand and say to all the world, "This was a man." He ordered Brutus's body to be treated with honor and to be given the rites of burial befitting a Roman noble. And so, upon the field of Philippi, the life of Brutus ended, a man torn between love of friend and love of country, whose fall marked not only the end of a cause, but the end of the Roman Republic itself. Oh, I hope I was able to narrate Julius Caesar to you properly and will helpful for you. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Dear students, now we will recall some important moments across different scenes in this act. Here we start with Scene 1, the plains of Philippi. Brutus and Cassius confront Antony and Octavius on the battlefield. The leaders exchange sharp insults, highlighting their animosity. Cassius feels uneasy, describing bad omens such as ravens and crows circling above. Both men prepare for battle, with Cassius bidding farewell to Brutus in case of death. Now about Brutus's command from Scene 2. Brutus orders Messala to charge against Octavius's forces. His urgency shows his commitment and determination to fight despite dwindling morale. The momentum of the battle shifts constantly, creating tension. In situation Cassius's death from Scene 3. Cassius mistakenly believes Titinius has been captured by the enemy. Overcome with guilt and despair, he asks his servant Pindarus to kill him with the same sword that slew Caesar. Cassius dies on his own birthday, a tragic irony that underlines his downfall. Next, in Scene 3, Titinius's loyalty. When Titinius returns safely and finds Cassius dead, he is stricken with grief. To honor his fallen friend, he takes Cassius's sword and kills himself. This double tragedy emphasizes the collapse of the conspirators' cause. Next, Lucilius's bravery in Scene 4. Lucilius, loyal to Brutus, pretends to be him during capture. The enemy takes him to Antony, who is impressed by Lucilius's bravery and spares his life. This act highlights themes of loyalty and honor, contrasting with betrayal seen earlier in the play. In Scene 5, Brutus's final stand. Defeated and weary, Brutus asks each of his men to help him die. Finally, Strato agrees to hold Brutus's sword, and Brutus runs upon it. With his last breath, Brutus declares he has met his fate more willingly than he killed Caesar. His death is portrayed as noble and honorable. The final conclusion. The play concludes with the defeat of Brutus's army at Philippi. Antony, in a moment of respect, declares Brutus to be the noblest Roman of them all, because he acted from genuine belief in the Republic rather than envy. Act 5 ends the tragedy by emphasizing loyalty, sacrifice, and the futility of civil war. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed our journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel for more videos.